This week has been slightly less exceptional for Disney, but we have something relatively juicy dropping. We have something of a smoking gun. But before we get into that smoking gun, Kamran, can't you get everyone up to speed and tell us what was your theory, your pure speculation about what's going on behind the scenes of Disney? More specifically, why Bob Chapek was fired so suddenly in the middle of a night on a Sunday during a concert before he could look at some papers Monday morning.
So thank you, Rondre, for giving me a platform to share my theory, which with each data point that's been revealed since I first put it out a few weeks ago, it keeps getting confirmed. And now I think we may have a smoking gun, literally from the horse's mouth. But my theory has been that this bizarre firing of Bob Chapek was based on something that they have not released publicly, and they're terrified to release publicly because it could lead to shareholder lawsuits, it could lead to SEC investigations, and they're trying to cover it up. That's my theory, and the theory is very specific. It is that the company, that Disney CFO Christine McCarthy, probably at the behest of the board and specifically at the behest of former CEO and former chairman, returned CEO Bob Iger, uh, invested the company in FTX for two reasons. One is to cover various accounting problems that we know they've had because we've had a whistleblower come out and say back in 2017 when Bob Iger was the CEO and Bob Chapek was nowhere in sight, that in 2017 this Disney accountant had found evidence of, I believe it was $3 billion worth of fraud inside the company, where they were misstating earnings at the parks and other places and shuffling money around to hide that in order to boost the stock price. And she was immediately fired, and she went to the SEC and complained, and just miraculously they settled with her just a few weeks ago, right? Settled her case against them that she had been fired unjustly. So I'm sure she has an NDA with that. But right
Shocked.
around the,
I'm completely shocked.
yeah, what a shock. So the event, the shock that hit all of us when Bob Chapek was fired was that it came out of nowhere. He seemed to be in a strong position, at least in the sense that he had control. He had removed Peter Rice and other competitors for his job inside the company. There was a bad quarterly earnings report. He handled it from the way I think most CEOs would handle it, which is he was very relaxed and said everything's going to be fine. We had a bad quarter, but this is what we're going to do to make things better. And part of that was he put out within a few days, and I had scooped through people on my Patreon who worked at Disney, gave it to me about 2 days before the trades had it, that there was going to be a hiring freeze and layoffs coming to start cleaning up the company and put it back on a profitable track. Same seems like the right actions you would take after a bad quarterly earnings report. And then literally a week and a half later, he is mysteriously outed, and the information that came out just kept changing, and why he was removed. What seems clear from the reports is Disney CFO Christine McCarthy on a Friday night, a week, 10 days after this earnings call that supposedly alerted her to, I don't like the way Chapek is managing things. So 10 days later, she suddenly has an emergency feeling that 10 days later, I've got to call the board on a Friday night for an emergency about something that's been building up inside of me for 10 days. And she calls the board secretly on Friday night. Bob Chapek doesn't know about it. They convene a meeting on over the weekend. And by Sunday, they fired him. He doesn't even know. He literally is on an Elton John concert and being told, sorry, boss, you're no longer the boss. You got to get off the stage, right? And then he vanishes. No word from him for the last month. And I have posited on this channel and on my Patreon that the only thing that would explain this bizarre behavior that matches the timeline of events, and for the CFO to be the catalyst for all of this, is some kind of financial crisis. And the only thing that we at least publicly know of that happened at the same time frame was the FTX scandal. FTX went bankrupt. That's a cryptocurrency exchange that essentially appears to have stolen billions of dollars, and the money's vanished, and these 30-year-old kids are now being, at least the process of appearing to be held accountable, right? The founder SBF is at least been imprisoned. We'll see how long that lasts. But the FTX scandal broke on November 11th, which is a Friday, and 1 week later, Bob Chapek is out. And so I've theorized that when FTX went bankrupt on November 11th, that Christine McCarthy and others who realized, oh my God, we actually have an exposure to this. We put money into this. We put a lot of money of the company into this. and we thought it was going to be a quick payout. It was gonna rise up like a Ponzi scheme. We'd cash out. Two benefits would happen. We'd cover our black hole that we have in our books that we know about from this SEC from this SEC truth teller, and then this other thing that Bob Iger I have suggested would have been involved in, which is that money, a large amount of that money was funneled to the Democratic Party and to candidates during this election cycle. Mr. Iger is a very passionate member of the Democratic Party, wants to run for president under that banner someday. So I've suggested those two things were the motivations for that, and then it goes to zero overnight, which is not what anyone expected. And so I think Ms. McCarthy immediately had her accountant said, find out what the exposure is. So that takes a few days. And so basically a week later, the accountants, in my opinion, had a report presented McCarthy. This is what the damage is. This is how it's going to affect payroll. This is the problem. We're in big trouble. That lands on her desk on Friday. She realizes that the next thing that's going to do is going to land on the desk on her boss, on the CEO on Monday. And so she immediately makes a panicked call on a Friday night when she gets that report saying, we can't let Mr. Chapek see this report because I'll be fired, and then he's going to ask questions, and I'll come back to you at the board who let Iger do this, right? Who told me to do this, and none of you want to go to jail, right? And so they said, oh my God, let's pull this, and they did. And so Bob Chapek is let out on a Sunday night before he can walk in and find this report waiting for him. And subsequent events with Bob Iger's brought back on that Sunday night. Monday, within 24 hours of that, Monday, we're hearing reports that Bob Iger is supposedly talking to Apple about some kind of transaction, whether it's a full sale of the company or sale of parts of it. He's never really denied it. He said that's all speculation. He's never denied it. And so that happens. And then also within 48 hours of Chapek being let go, the bankruptcy judge in this FTX proceeding does this extremely unusual thing where it allows the investors who lost money in FTX to remain anonymous, which is not normal in a bankruptcy proceeding. So that's exactly what you would need if you're Disney and you needed to hide that. You'd call the judge and say, Bob Iger call the judge and say, you don't want this out there. It'll be bad for whatever your political future is, and so cover it up. And so all those things lined up. Other events came out a few days ago. The trade started reporting that Christine McCarthy, the CFO, who I'm positing was the spearhead of this conspiracy, is now being designated publicly as the next successor to Bob Iger, which you've stated that might work for smaller companies. The CFO becoming the CEO, not really how it's done in Hollywood, never really been done in Hollywood. And she doesn't have the skills to manage this company, particularly the Hollywood relationships element. I mean, Bob Chapek was a manager with a financial background, and he was considered to have no contacts with the Hollywood community. So how is this woman who's literally spent her entire career inside an accounting office, how's she going to manage, how's she going to schmooze James Cameron and Brad Pitt? I mean, it's not really her skill set, right? Bob Chapek barely had that skill set, and he was a manager. And so this was the bizarre thing to me. That at that time I said my theory is confirmed, because the only reason they would have her up is that the next CEO is going to come in and eventually look through the books and go, what happened here in 2022? This is illegal, I don't want to go down for this. I'm calling the SEC. I'm calling, the government. I'm calling, the Justice Department. What is this, right? So they can't have anybody else ever come in and look at those books, right? And so the only person they can have to be the next CEO is the person responsible, or at least the person they made responsible for this crisis. That's McCarthy, even though she's not properly trained to be the CEO of Disney. So that, to me, at that time was confirmed. And then last night, at midnight.
Yeah, do set up, because Kamran, before we move on, I just want to say that so far, yes, all we have is speculation. Is you just look at the tea leaves, you see at what is happening, and then you come up with speculation that fits all of these data points that you have described, which are off. But since the courts decided to hide the biggest losers in the whole FTX things, we don't know that Disney was involved. We don't know that Iger did anything. Now, with that in mind, please set up the clip that I'm about to play. I'm going to play it from about 15 seconds before the smoking gun drops. So set up this clip. What are we about to see?
What we're about to see is a message I got last night. I'd heard rumors about this, but I hadn't seen the actual clip. So people are like, hey, man, you hear about this? I was like, no, I didn't hear about this. And then last night, a Midnight's Edge viewer who I hope is watching today, I don't know if I should name them, but I'll simply say their first name is Manny, and I want to thank you, Manny. Manny sent this to me by DM on Instagram, and what it is an interview from CNBC from a few days ago, where a gentleman, Mr. O'Leary is his name. He's essentially the spokesman for FTX. Or at least my understanding is he was given something like $15 million to be the to serve as a mouthpiece for FTX. Kevin O'Leary is his name. And,
our Canadian Kevin O'Leary.
oh, so you know this guy, right?
Oh.
I've heard some shady things about this character.
Oh, I can tell you lots about him. Lots. We
All
go
right.
right back to the CD-ROM days when he created shovelware and then sold it off for $1 billion to Mattel, and they sued him right back because they realized it was crap.
All right,
I got lots of stories on Kevin O'Leary.
Well, we're gonna get the context of those once we see what this guy did now, because he's got foot and mouth syndrome, as we're gonna see. So Kevin O'Leary, he's been a public spokesman for FTX, apparently a paid spokesman. I understand $15 million he was given to tout FTX, sort of like Gisele Bundchen was touting FTX, right? And apparently this gentleman was also in front of Congress this week, because I saw he was testifying in front of Congress, and I was shocked by his testimony. Basically, he essentially tried to take blame off of the fraudulent behavior of the people that hired him and put it on this other competing cryptocurrencies that revealed the fraud, right? So that's very shady stuff to do that in front of Congress. This guy seems to be a shady guy, but he was a spokesman for FTX.
Wow.
And so a few days ago, and this is the clip we're about to see, a few days ago, he was doing a CNBC interview, and he let a certain person's name slip before they cut him off on live television. So why don't we play this thing, and then
let's play this. Let's play this clip. I'm gonna play it right here.
That I felt drove a lot of interest in FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried is an American. His parents are American compliance lawyers. There were no other American large exchanges to invest in if you wanted to invest in crypto as an infrastructure play. So many of them, we knew, for example,
This sounds like
Tiger.
This sounds like groupthink.
You all hear that? All hear that? Let's do that one more time.
Many of us said, wait a second, who's coming to this deal? We knew, for example,
This sounds like
Tiger.
This sounds like groupthink.
And
There
maybe
was.
we know
Wow.
who's coming to this deal. We know, for example, Iger. Who's coming to this deal?
Iger. And that's even loud and clear.
Ooh.
Well, loud and clear. It's right there. When you put on the closed captions, it's not synced, but it's there.
Back
Iger.
and to the left. Back and to the left, Andre.
That's what this is. I mean, this cloud, we knew who's coming. This guy just blew the whole thing open. He blew the whole thing
Said,
open.
wait
What
a
I've been
second,
theorizing for
who's
4
coming to this
weeks. He
deal?
blew it
We
open.
knew, for example,
This
that
sounds like
Tiger.
This sounds like groupthink.
And
If there
maybe it was, Joe.
did you know there was no CFO?
Look, at the end of the day,
Yeah, there we go. Like a little bit out of sync, but there you have it.
Yeah.
Iger.
Screen grab that.
Oh, I already downloaded it.
We know
This is what you call a smoking gun. There's literally no other
Wow.
Iger that he could be referring to.
No.
And so think about this. This guy's against the wall. He's afraid of going in front of Congress a few days later. He's afraid he might get pulled in for fraud, right? And so when you're in that kind of place, why is the first name on his mind Iger? Why is the first name when he's thinking of investors Iger? That means that Bob Iger was one of his biggest relationships. That's the only reason that guy's name, it's not 20 other people you could name or financial people, big Wall Street people whose name we don't know. Bob Iger's on the tip of his tongue because that's the guy he's been dealing with on a large scale. He just blew the whole thing wide open.
I got the sense that he was going to drop a few more names before he was cut off.
He was.
But I mean, and I think maybe the tactic is to show that big players were involved, so it wasn't him. I think this was a way to involve himself.
You're right, Paul. That's what's going to drop all these idiots. Is they're all going to throw each other under the bus. Like this was dropping Iger's name was a much bigger name than this guy. He was trying to deflect. He's like, I might have been an idiot, but Bob Iger's not an idiot. So
correct. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Boy, Kamran, that's an amazing set of little tea leaves that you have been stringing together for the last few weeks. Holy
and as
Chato, I have to say, Chato, you were doubtful, but now seeing this clip, what say you?
Well, I mean, I'm not in the area of high finance like Kamran is. I mean, he's, I think it's extraordinary. First of all, Kevin O'Leary, I actually have a personal relationship with him, even though he probably doesn't remember me. Yeah, good. I'm happy to see him trip up. So I don't have a problem with that. But dropping the Iger name, obviously, I think you're right. They are covering up an awful lot of internal financial issues with regards to FTX. Everybody is. I mean, the thing is, they're taking FTX, putting them in the same jail cell as Epstein, and hopefully FTX hangs itself.
Well,
mysteriously.
But I actually want to. I think you said it. You said it. As a joke. But there's a little bit. I want to address one thing that you said, because it was raised in other Midnight's Edge videos that have come out that have at least allowed me to present this, and I've stated it's speculation. I now think I've been publicly proven, but whatever. It's still speculation because I don't have the internal documents.
It's speculation, but now it's speculation with a smoking gun.
Wow. The FTX spokesman dropped his name. The FTX spokesman dropped his name on CNBC, right, as one of the major investors. He just dropped it because that's the context of what he's talking about. Who are the major players? People like Iger. So I do want to say one thing because a critique that I've seen on some of the recent videos, Midnight's Edge, people say, Cameron, stick to screenwriting. You don't know nothing about finance. You got no background. It is absolutely true that I'm a screenwriter, but I want to say this to Mike. I think you can support because I've asked you to support me on this. So it is true. I am a screenwriter, but and that is true. I will add this. I'm not your typical screenwriter because one person on in the comments have been bragging. I'm an MBA. I understand this stuff better than Cameron. He doesn't know anything. I'm an MBA too. I actually have an MBA from the Tuck School at Dartmouth, which is one of the best schools in the world, right? I have a law degree from Cornell. I worked at the SEC. So that's all prior to me being a screenwriter. So I don't claim to be a financial genius like Mike here, but I got a little bit more knowledge than people are giving me credit for.
I want to be on record saying I was not besmirching you.
I know you were. I just but people were besmirching me. And look, argue with my ideas. That whole credentialism garbage. If you want to play that game, well, my MBA is more impressive than your MBA. So,
but facts are facts.
Yeah.
No matter where they come from. It's I think it's a little bit more important when you're you purport some kind of scientific medical research and it's not your field, but you still have PhD that you're tossing around. But with regards to this, I think your skill set and what you've demonstrated before, actually in previous Midnight Edge videos, I have tons of confidence in you.
And Cameron has taken a lot of heat in live chats, live streams, and a lot of comments on a lot of places that various clips of the videos exist. And look, I got my career started in the ExxonMobil controllers group. And I get to see this stuff up close early. And I've done, my firm alone, I've done almost 60 audits of mergers and acquisitions and dealing with C-level executives, especially in the technology space. And I certainly had a production office open in Santa Monica for a long time where I did production office accounting. And so I've seen a lot of shenanigans. And I want to back Cameron up. When he came up with his theory, it made sense to me instantly. And one of the things that made the most sense to me is that if someone has some skeletons to be buried, who else do you bring, or some skeletons that are being hidden that are buried, who else do you bring back than the person that probably generated those skeletons anyways, which in this case would be Iger. And as far as Chapek, it explains why he's dead silent, walked away and said, oh, screw this, I'm out.
So explain to me again why they didn't leave Chapek in there to fall on the sword. This is the one piece that I'm not understanding.
Because he would have rolled as fast as he could. Yeah, because I mean, this was all outside of the directed control that was happening in his organization. There's a lot of things that will happen as a CEO that you don't have any direct influence over.
Paul, if I screwed up a company, I screwed up a company and I hired you to be and they hired you to be CEO, do you want to take the fall, potentially legally, personal liability for what I set in place?
No, I wouldn't, but I'm not a lifer in this.
Yeah,
you're not. I mean, he wasn't airlifted. He had.
Chapek is not part of the lifer club. He had plausible deniability. Yep. This is something that happened without his involvement. This is like the name that was brought up here was Iger,
right?
The head of the board.
So they did him a favor. They did him a favor by pushing him aside.
They kind of, because here's like the thing. This is exactly what Kamran was saying. Chapek might not have known. He would only find out about this Monday morning. If Kamran's speculation is accurate, now we have a smoking gun that does not conclusively prove it, but it adds substantial weight to it. If we follow Kamran's argument here, then Chapek didn't know. And he really might not have known, because an investment like this is a CFO and board thing that doesn't have to involve the CEO at all.
This is a cash treasury management function, which has nothing to do with the CEO running a company.
So he would see the numbers on Monday, and you know what he would do then? It's no skin off of his teeth. He could go and report this. He could send them all to jail. He'd be the hero for being the whistleblower.
Yep. So he would gather the few members of the board that's on his side and immediately get rid of. Wow.
Yes.
He could.
Yes, and that was my point.
Send Iger to jail.
And the controller
and the CFO, and that was my point. Like, so when we talked about this a few weeks, I don't remember what week it was. When we talked about this with Cameron, when we were on the show that Friday, the point that I made is there was something so overwhelming that she could not let the sun rise on the books that week and not that Monday. And if there had been a holiday weekend on Monday, then this would have broken on Monday night. To me, there was something happening that the books could not see the light of day, and another week could not be allowed to pass.
Yep. And like I said, I mean, I think it was done in Congress with the CFO. I think Christine McCarthy was 100% on board with Iger if this is what happened. But I have a question. In this CNBC interview that we just saw, and Mr. Watari actually posted a super chat that's relevant here. But if this anchor that was talking with O'Leary at the time was Andrew Ross Sorkin, he's the guy that just did at the Radio Citio Good Book Deal or whatever it is conference that they have, the New York Times thing. It was Andrew Ross Sorkin who actually interviewed SBF about the FTX thing. At that particular thing. So, and he just served up Softball City. So it's not surprising to me that if he's the person who interjected there when names were starting to be dropped, that doesn't surprise me. There's a lot to cover up here and it's not, I promise you, it wasn't just Disney that was, very deep into this. I think you probably had some major media players trying to bolster their failing business models because believe me, Hollywood is a failing business model at the moment.
Culture.
Right. This is Epstein level stuff here.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, Kevin O'Leary was given $15 million to promote FTX.
Yes, thank you, Jim Watari, for pointing that out for $20.
Yeah.
Also, while we're on Super Chats, Mick J says, hashtag Kamran was right. Follow the money.
Look, this is me just sitting here, writing a script and looking and going, this doesn't make any sense. If I were making a story out of this, how would the story points connect, right? and that's like, it's like taking notes. It's like, you've given me a bad script here, because that's what Disney PR was giving us, a bad script that doesn't work, right? That has so many holes in it. So I was like, all right, you've brought me as a script doctor, like our friend script doctor. All right, the only way I can make these story points make sense is there was an FTX scam at the center. Let's do that for the story, and then it all works.
You know what we've learned? Never doubt the two Camerons.
Yeah, this is true. And also, this is the whole reason why after Kamran first told this to me, why I was like, yeah, come on and present it, and I'll clip it. Because could I conclusively say this is correct? No, I couldn't. It's speculation. But it's speculation that adequately explains some very anomalous observations that I could see no other good explanation for. Like, for instance, we had a very, very good reading of the situation from WDW Pro. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely think there's an element to what he said, namely that Chapek was coming a little bit too close to HR issues that stood very, very close to the heart of BlackRock and other investors, and they said we need to get rid of him. This is a case of where two things can be true at once. But what Kamran said here, that explains some observations that BlackRock alone doesn't explain. Like, that doesn't explain why McCarthy would be groomed to be the next CEO after Iger. This or something else like it is the only scenario under which something like that would happen.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's data points that keep coming out, and I said this at the very first time I came on Midnight's Edge about 3 weeks ago with this, right? Data points keep coming out, and I said each data point is going to confirm this. And now we've had the ultimate smoking gun. A name has been thrown out. A name has been brought by CNBC by the FTX spokesman. A name that has never been associated with FTX publicly before.
Yeah, and someone who's been waiting patiently in the background, I'll let him in now. Hey, Script Doctor, how's it going?
Hey. Oh, good morning, everybody. Yes,
you missed all the fun.
Oh no,
no, he was here.
To it.
Yeah. But we have some other shenanigans with Disney. I'm going to run through a few of these super chats that relates to this topic. For everyone that sent super chats earlier about Warner and DC, we'll get to them, but right now focus is on Disney. Pinochet's helicopter tours, a name that's actually very apt given how this could have ended up if
and that's why Bob Chapek, again, I'm not saying nothing. I got nothing to say about this. You don't need no NDA. I'm just keeping my mouth shut.
And he just said it's free and anonymous to call in tips to the SEC. And Sean Carter says for $10, who'd have thought that the best entertainment we'd see from Disney is the forthcoming scandal that's about to be unveiled? This entire thing reeks of bad behavior. And then we had Chad Rupnerin, who said for another $10, I hate when people think they know better just because they went to X school and have X degree. Experience trumps everything. So when someone like Kamran speaks, I listen. And also Kamran has that education X squared.
Well, thank you so much. And I just think we are that when you've lost an argument when one of two things happens: when they call you a name or they question your credentials instead of actually addressing the point you're making.
Yeah, and Jim Watari sent another $20 saying even the Justice Department charges SBF before he can testify before Congress and implicate himself and others.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this O'Leary guy can't keep his mouth shut. You think this SBF guy is not going to start spilling the beans and say, he's just going to go like a fire hose?
You had a sealed indictment, and he had 3 sets of charges thrown at him. The eighth charge from the criminal side of things was ridiculous, right? So he's getting it from all sides, not just the criminal division of the Department of Justice, but they're coming after him from the SEC. They're looping around. They're gonna take him to task, and they're gonna try to keep him shut up. And that's why Congress isn't going to get a chance to have a day with him, or at least not one that's meaningful. So
yeah.
Wow, wouldn't it have been amazing to have Chapek call the Disney internal police and frog march out to McCarthy and Iger?
That's what would have happened come Monday.
I think you're right.
He would have done that on Monday. That's why she had to do it. And then
wow.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
There's no other reason why. There's no other reason why a CFO would say it's so urgent and influence the board and play whatever games except self-preservation of herself and what.
But then why is it so quiet out there? I'm not understanding.
Because there's so many in on it.
I guess. Wow.
That's how scandals work.
20 years ago, this FTX thing, it would have been Enron times 20.
I'm so naive.
And it's completely quiet now because so many are involved, including in the media.
Think about remember Watergate, right? Watergate had one security guard in the hotel not notice something was fishy in one of the rooms. None of that would have broken open. I mean, none of that would have been broken open. And then it broke open like an avalanche, right? And so I think this Mr. O'Leary has popped a bubble here. And and our friends at CNBC wanted to make sure no one noticed it, but Midnight's Edge viewers noticed it, and they brought it to our attention, and now we're going to clip this all and put it together. And